How do you know that somebody grows pumpkins? Because they'll never shut up about it. Well, in this case, it's true for me. Today I am down in the pumpkin patch because you have guessed it, we are starting our pumpkins today. Now there is a lot to learn about growing pumpkins, and there is a lot of information that I want to give you that I have learned over the years. So like the tomato videos I'm doing, I'm going to split this into a multi-part series. Today, in the first part, we're going to go through how to sow our pumpkin seeds. Today is the 10th of April. Now I had every intention of starting my pumpkins last week, but the temperatures last week were a bit cold. We were still going into the minuses, so I decided to hold off until this week. The reason being is that I like to start my pumpkins outside in my unheated polytunnel. I've just found the last few years when I bring them inside and start them in the house where it's warmer, they germinate faster, but they don't necessarily equal better plants. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that they start off too fast inside in the heat, and then when they go outside the temperature drop, they can't cope with it, or it slows them down. But just from personal experience, I find it's better if I leave them in an unheated polytunnel, let them start off in there. Like, they will go a bit slower than inside, but they will get there eventually, and they definitely end up being a stronger plant. So I'm starting them today and I'm leaving them outside in the polytunnel. The temperatures this week are to be kind of in the mid-teens, so it should give me the temperatures that they need to germinate and get a good start. I'm sowing my pumpkin seeds in a 15 cell module tray. Pumpkin seeds grow at an alarming rate, so I like to give them a bit of space, and enough space that if I can't pot them on as soon as I'd like to, that I'm not going to stunt their growth and they'll get pot bound. So make sure that you use something appropriate to the size, and even if you were going for a giant variety, I would be using a bigger size than this. Also, they're very, very heavy feeders. Like, they're fast grown plants, they're big plants, so you need to make sure that the compost that you're starting them off in is going to support this growth. They're going to need the space, the access to the nutrients, and the access to moisture to make sure that you grow good, strong, healthy plants that don't get stunted. And as always, don't forget to write your label before you start sowing, because all of the plants look the same and you won't be able to tell the difference between the varieties until it's too late. So once you have your module tray full, it's time to sow your seeds. So this is what pumpkin and squash seeds look like. What I like to do before I sow them is lay one out on the top of each module. I find sometimes you can be halfway through sowing them and then you get distracted, you have to do something, you come back and you don't know which modules you've sown into and which you haven't. So by lying them out, it's like a little visual aid so that you know where you're at if you have to stop, go off and do something and come back. Once all your seeds are laid out, it can be very tempting to just push them down into the soil with your finger, but because they're quite large seeds with a large surface area, they can be quite prone to rotting. So what you want to do is turn them on their side and sow them down on their side. This is going to give them the best chance of germinating without rotting in the damp compost. It can seem a little bit tedious doing it this way and making sure they're all sown on their side, but just remember, like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You are going to be growing these pumpkins for 6 months before you harvest them, so you're better off putting the effort in now, sowing them well, because that will give you a stronger plant, which in turn will give you bigger pumpkins. Once all the seeds are sown, it's time to water them in well. So I sit them in a tray, water them from the top, and then fill the bottom of the tray with 1 inch or 2 of water and leave the tray sitting there for a few minutes so that the compost soaks all the way through evenly. You need to remember that your compost is going to have to stay damp to aid the germination of the pumpkins. Then I leave them in my unheated polytunnel in full sun and give it, depending on the temperatures, a week or 2 and you should start to see germination. So now our seeds are sown. All we have to do is wait for them to germinate, and I will be back in a couple of weeks. It won't be too long because they germinate fairly fast generally, especially if we're going to get the temperatures this week that we're expecting. And once they're germinated, I will be on to talk about potting them up, how to care for them until we're ready to plant them out. Happy sowing, thanks for watching, and as always, any questions down below.